Good morning. I'm Kenya McDuffie, Councilman for Ward 5 and Chair of the Council's Committee on Business and Economic Development. Today is Thursday, March 24th, 2022, and we are convening this meeting virtually via Zoom. It's also being streamed live via YouTube. The time is 9:01 a.m. and I'm calling to order this budget oversight hearing. Although each year the mayor presents a proposed budget and four-year financial plan to the council and district residents, the council is the governing body that passes and enabling legislation for the upcoming fiscal year. These budget hearings are convened so we may hear from government agencies on their programmatic and budget priorities and from members of the public about how these proposals may impact them and their communities. This process helps the council understand how specific budget allocations impact district residents, so we may then finalize and pass a budget that best serves the needs of district residents. It is undisputed that district residents have been through a tremendous amount over the past 2 years and have demonstrated their resiliency during difficult times. While the pandemic is not over yet, district residents and business owners alike have battled significant waves of the Delta and Omicron variants and are hopeful about our recovery. We're in a good place this year as we begin to consider the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget. District revenues have recovered to pre-pandemic levels and is expected to grow throughout the financial plan. This is no small accomplishment. However, the CFO's revenue estimates show that this recovery is not equitably distributed, with those at the top continuing to do well, while those who have suffered the most, both before and during the pandemic, continue to struggle. Fiscal year 2023 proposed budget includes $10.7 billion in local funds and $19.5 billion in gross funds. Today, the committee will hear from two agencies, the Department of Insurance, Securities and Banking, and the Department of Small and Local Business Development on if and how their budget proposals provide meaningful programs, services, and assistance that will enable our district residents, families, and businesses to fully recover and thrive. First, we're going to hear from the Department of Insurance, Securities and Banking, or DISB. DISB has three main objectives: to cultivate a regulatory environment that protects consumers and attracts and retains financial service firms to the district, to empower and educate residents on financial matters, and to provide financing for district small businesses. DISB's proposed fiscal year 2023 operating budget is $37 million, and 8.6% increase over the approved fiscal year 2022 budget of $34 million. The proposed operating budget supports 157 FTEs, which is a 12% increase from the approved fiscal year 2022 operating budget. With that, I'm going to call our government witness, and we already have Commissioner Karima Woods here to testify. Good morning to you, Commissioner Woods. Thank you for joining us this morning. Begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairperson McDuffie, and good morning to you and Committee of Business and Economic Development members and staff. I'm pleased to be here with you today. I am Karima Woods, Commissioner of the Department of Insurance, Securities and Banking, also known as DISB. I'm pleased to appear before the committee today to provide testimony on DISB's FY23 budget and to share some of the successes that DISB accomplished in FY22. Last week, Mayor Bowser presented Fair Shot, the fiscal year 2023 FY23 budget and financial plan, the district's 27th consecutive balanced budget. This budget builds on the mayor's recovery budget from last year as the district continues to emerge from the pandemic while addressing residents' critical social, economic, and health needs. This budget also demonstrates the mayor's unwavering commitment to building a safer, stronger, healthier, and more equitable DC. The mayor's budget makes strategic investments in education, affordable housing, ending homelessness, economic recovery, infrastructure, public safety, and city services. DISB regulates insurance, securities, banking, and other financial services in the District of Columbia. Our mission is threefold. First, to cultivate a regulatory environment that protects consumers and attracts and retains financial services firms to the district. Second, to empower and educate residents on financial matters. And third, to provide financing to district small businesses. We accomplish this by working to ensure district residents have access to a wide choice of financial services and are treated fairly by service providers. We also work to sustain a district business climate that encourages fair and open competition. The mayor's FY23 budget gives DISB the necessary resources to fulfill our mission of protecting consumers, helping to create pathways to the middle class, and supporting small business and economic development growth in the district. The mayor's FY23 budget for DISB is $37,097,902, an 8.6% increase from our approved FY22 budget. Our budget consists of $35,225,000 in special purpose revenue O-type funds, $1,705,000 in local funds, and an additional $168,000 in federal grant funds. The FY23 budget supports 157 full-time positions, an increase of 13 FTEs from our FY22 budget. The increase in FTEs serves two purposes. First, to increase DISB's capacity to deliver services to underserved populations by building upon ongoing activities in racial equity, student loan support, and funding for small businesses. And second, to address staffing needs to strengthen consumer and investor protection that council mandated staffing cuts have severely hampered in previous budget cycles. Mayor Bowser has expressed optimism about the district's ongoing recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Likewise, I'm optimistic about continuing to financially empower and educate residents and growing district small businesses. The mayor's budget will allow DISB to expand our ability to fulfill our important mission. Now I would like to give you a brief overview of a few of our recent successes and plans as we move further into the fiscal year and prepare for the next one. Since the inception in 2020, DISB's Office of Financial Empowerment and Education, also known as OFEE, continues to mature, providing district residents with new tools and programs to increase financial empowerment and access. Though OFEE is still a new entity, its programs are crucial to district residents' personal financial recovery from the hardships many have faced during the pandemic. In FY23, OFEE will use $1.7 million from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 to expand the Opportunity Accounts program and fully implement the financial coaching for returning citizens programs. OFEE programs like Bank on DC, Financially Fit DC, and Financial Navigators have already had a significant positive impact on district residents. As we hire 5 additional ARPA-funded OFEE staff for these new and expanded programs, the reach and overall impact of OFEE on district residents will increase as well. The Student Loan Ombudsman continues to work tirelessly to support district residents with education and individual assistance regarding student loans. Through the first 5.5 months of this fiscal year, the Ombudsman has addressed 46 student loan debt complaints totaling more than $2.8 million and assisted residents in recovering $200,000 in loan forgiveness. Additionally, through 8 highly successful outreach events, the Ombudsman has already provided nearly 1,400 residents with important information on student loan opportunities this fiscal year. DISB also provides a vital funding to district small businesses through DC BizCap, the District State Small Business Credit Initiative program, also referred to as the SSBCI program. Since the start of FY21, DISB has provided $3,645,000 in funding comprised of 10 loans to local businesses, assisting in creating 351 new jobs in the district. Later this year, the district will receive $62 million in federal SSBCI funding as part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. DISB will collaborate with the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development to provide additional funds for district-based small businesses through new and improved programs. DISB will lead administration of the funds and will transfer $26 million to DMPED to establish a venture capital program. DISB's allocation will include $15 million for the collateral support program, which provides funds for deposit with a participating lender to provide the necessary capital to cover the borrower's collateral shortfall, and an additional $20 million for the Innovation Finance Program, which provides capital for investment in District of Columbia startups and emerging companies that seek financing alternatives to traditional commercial financing. To facilitate greater reach in dispersing this funding, DISB will contract with the Community Development Financial Institution focused on providing access to capital to district-based small businesses through an RFP process. I'm excited about the inclusion of DISB's proposed Office of Innovation within the Mayor's budget to support the development and implementation of responsible innovation in the financial services industry. By collaborating with external stakeholders, the Office of Innovation will develop a regulatory environment to attract financial technology-based businesses that offer innovative and accessible financial products and services for district residents while maintaining safety, soundness, and consumer protection. These efforts will assist in attracting new businesses to the district and help cultivate this region as a growing financial services hub. Finally, DISB continues to meet our responsibility in administering the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act of 2010. DISB is preparing for the annual rate review process for individual and small employer group plans to be offered in 2023 on DC HealthLink. This review process ensures that rates are priced fairly, considering the benefits provided, are reasonable to adequately cover the cost of medical services and operating expenses, and are not unfairly discriminatory. Providers will begin submitting 2023 rates later this spring. DISB will also hold a hearing on the 2023 health insurance proposed rates, which will allow the public to provide comments and input on how DISB should consider the filings. Allowing for public comment on the proposed rates provides a vital community connection point, ensuring that residents understand that they play an important role in the rate review process. DISB received a $168,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to review the ACA plans for any health disparities in collaboration with the Health Benefit Exchange. Lastly, DISB continues to monitor and evaluate federal activities that could change the life-saving and asset-protecting measures in the ACA. Ensuring an affordable health insurance landscape in the district remains a DISB concern. In closing, the resources allocated to DISB will play a critical role in supporting the Mayor's COVID-19 recovery for district residents and businesses. We remain committed to collaborating with you and the entire council on the department's vital mission to protect consumers, empower residents about their financial well-being, and invest in district small businesses. I'm optimistic about the continued positive impact that DISB will have on district residents and small businesses in FY23. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have of me at this time. And I also want to note that I'm joined by our agency fiscal officer, Dereje Belay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. I do have some questions. I have some that are based on your testimony, but I'm going to start as I have in the past with a couple of questions around racial equity, just to get a sense of how the department is focusing on its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Are there specific programs or allocations included in your proposed fiscal year 2023 budget that are designed to address racial or economic inequities faced by district residents? If so, I'd love to hear you describe them in detail and how they will address those inequities.
Absolutely. I want to first just acknowledge and again, thank you for your leadership on the creation of the REACH Act. I also want to just acknowledge the work of the mayor and the creation of the Office of Racial Equity, as we have been working closely with Dr. Hewitt and her office on all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Also just want to highlight that the majority of our programs that are designed to support businesses, particularly our financial empowerment and education programs, are all designed with an understanding around closing the racial wealth gap. And so there is a focus that you'll find throughout each of our programs that I'm happy to talk about in a little more detail. So some of those programs that I think speak to addressing racial equity in the district include our DC BizCap program, which provides lending support for small businesses, which helps to serve as an economic engine for communities. With our DC BizCap program, we have invested in over 35 businesses, and I would say 85% of those businesses have been minority and women-owned businesses. And so that is one of the many ways in which we're supporting minority businesses here in the District of Columbia.
What was the last program you just mentioned that is investing in minority-owned businesses, Commissioner?
DC BizCap.
BizCap, okay. So you said about 85% of them are minority-owned?
Correct.
Do you know whether the 85%, there's a correlation to the percentage of funds that are actually spent on the program? Because you can have 85% go to minority-owned businesses, but much less actually proportionately of the funds actually go to those same businesses. And I'm curious to see whether the investments that you're making relate to the size and proportion of the funds that are actually being spent with those businesses. Do you know that?
I do have a breakdown of all of the businesses and the dollar amount of our investments. I can provide a breakdown based upon which of those are minority owned and share that information with you.
Okay, I'll note in your testimony, I know you referenced it. I might get back to that with a question. I think on page 3, you talked about that program. So I appreciate that.
Do you want me to continue with the other programs as well?
Oh, sure, please. So
I referenced DC BizCap. We also run our Opportunity Accounts program, which is a match savings program, and we provide support to district residents that put those resources towards accomplishing their goals, such as home ownership, education costs, and also small businesses for startup capital. We also administer our Bank On DC program, which is designed for those residents that are unbanked and underbanked. Our Financially Fit DC program, which is more of a comprehensive financial education program that provides a range of trainings and tools and information for district residents, and also our student loan program and foreclosure mediation programs, both of which address racial inequity here in the district. And so those are some of our programs. We have newer programs we've also started this fiscal year, including DC Reach, which is our roundtable for economic access and change. That program is uniquely designed to address the racial wealth gap. Also, our Financial Services Academy, which was designed under the umbrella of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, that is also designed to support young people in developing pipelines in the financial services sector with the focus on underrepresented young people here in the district. So those are some of the programs that we administer here at the department that help to address racial inequity here in the district.
Just if you could, the last program you mentioned that works with underrepresented young people in the district, which program is that?
That is the Financial Services Academy, and those are young people in high school and also college and universities. And
how do you all identify participants for that program?
Well, as of now, we have partnered with institutions that would do the identification of those individuals. So our partners include George Washington University and also Gallaudet University. We also partner with Department of Employment Services through its SYEP program.
Okay. And do you know how many young folks participate in that program?
It's a new program, and so I would have to get the exact numbers that we had last summer. So we had a pretty robust cohort of young people. I would say it was close to about 25 that participated last summer, but I can get you exact numbers and follow up to the hearing.
That'd be great. And if you have if you could identify which wards they live in, would be great as well. I'd love to see which parts of our city are represented by these young people who participate in that program. So thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Let me talk about the captive insurance agency, which is an agency within DISB. The proposed budget for fiscal year 23 of $10.48 million. And this appears to mark a 76% increase from the FY22 budget of $5.8 million. This includes an 87.9% increase in local funds. So talk about the dramatic increase with the captive insurance program.
Are you referring to our Risk Finance Bureau?
I'm referring to the captive insurance program. Is that not something that falls under your agency?
It is, but it falls under our Risk Finance Bureau.
I'm talking about that.
So I'm asking because I don't know if there's a particular activity line that you're looking at.
Okay. Well,
or are you referring to the District of Columbia government's captive insurance agency program?
Yeah, the captive insurance agency.
Okay, the captive insurance agency is actually administered by the Office of Risk Management.
Okay.
It's not a program of the department. It is the district's captive program. And so they, like all captive insurers here that are domiciled here in the district, have to submit their financials to our agency. We review that information. We look at them to determine financial solvency and making sure that they meet those requirements.
So what's DISB's role? Because I am aware that it's administered by ORM, but what is your role as it relates to captive? Anything?
Our role related to any captive programs any captives that are domiciled here in the district are to conduct ongoing financial examinations of the captives to ensure that they're meeting financial solvency requirements. So as it relates to the specific budget of the District of Columbia's captive insurance agency program, that budget what the work that they do is administered through the Office of Risk Management.
Okay. Let's look at your vacancies. I mean, overall, there are a number of vacancies across the government, obviously. I think nearly 500 vacancies or so, and you all have 21 vacancies, which I think you all are in the process of hiring. I know we had a conversation prior to today's hearing, but give me an update as to, because I have numbers slightly different than what you mentioned in your testimony. Your testimony says the budget supports 157 full-time positions, and you said that's an increase of 13 FTEs. My review of the information that we have in the budget suggests that you have an increase of 18 FTEs over the FY22 approved budget. So how many FTEs do you have currently, totally, for this fiscal year, 22? And then how many are proposed for fiscal year 2023?
Yes, and thank you for that question. It's a little confusing because we currently have 139 FTEs, but that doesn't include the additional 5 ARPA-funded FTEs. And so when you factor in the additional 5 ARPA-funded, that brings our total to current 144 FTEs. And then when you add the additional 13 proposed FTEs for FY23, that will bring our total to 157 FTEs.
Okay, were the 5 ARPA FTEs a part of your FY22 budget when it was approved, or no?
No, it was not.
Okay, and how many current vacancies do you have?
Currently, according to the Schedule A, we have 29, but since submitting the Schedule A to the committee, we have filled 3 positions with candidates actually on board. We also have filled 5 additional positions with candidates that have start dates that range from the end of this month to the end of next month. And so if you subtract the 8 candidates that I just referenced, we have about 21 current vacancies. I would add that within that number, there's a number of different efforts we have underway. We have other offers that are pending with DCHR. We also recently participated in the district's virtual hiring fair, where we had 12 positions that we had posted, and we found it to be a successful endeavor. We actually extended an offer, and we have a couple of other pending offers, so we're waiting to complete that process before finalizing that. This was the first time we participated in a virtual hiring fair and found it to be successful. Met with well over upwards of 300 plus candidates we chatted with regarding a number of our positions. We also have a number of other offers that are currently under review that have not been finalized with DCHR. So in short, when we look at the total number of current vacancies in comparison to those positions that we know are currently under review, we're hopeful that we'll be able to fill all of those vacancies by the end of this year.
Okay, and in FY22 to date, how much do you all have in vacancy savings?
In vacancy savings, hold on just a moment. FY22 to date, we have approximately 762,678 in vacancy savings, and Derasia, you can confirm that number if I'm correct.
Good morning. This is Derasia Bela, Agency Physical Officer. Yes, in fiscal year 22, we have vacancy saving of 760,000 across the 2 funding, 585,000 in special SPR fund, and 177,000 in ARPA funded positions. That's the breakdown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Within the, well, let me ask this. For FY21, do you recall what the budget was for, I don't know, let me see if I have, what was your budget for FY21?
Just a moment. FY21, our actual budget was 24,909,000.
Okay, and did you expend the entirety of your budget for FY21?
That information I would need to get back to you on unless you have it, Derasia.
So in FY21, we have a surplus of 3.5 million.
Okay, 3.5 million surplus for FY20?
Yes.
Okay, did you have a surplus in FY20?
It's about the same number, but let me give you the exact amount. In fiscal year 20,
You can give me a price.
yes, approximately, yes, 2.8 million.
Okay.
In
And,
FY20.
and for those 2 years, those two surpluses in FY20 and FY21, I don't need all the details, but are they largely comprised of similar non-spending in similar areas, I should say?
Yes, most of them is like in personnel service due to the existing vacancy saving. That's every year we giving.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let me see. What's my next question? Within your proposed FY23 operating budget, the subsidies and transfers allocation is $3.3 million, which is a 65% increase from the FY22 allocation. What do you attribute that increase to?
You said the subsidies and
Transfers is 3.3. I think in FY22 it was $2 million. Trying to get a sense of what the increase is also.
Let me give you the reason is being in the current year, the non-personnel section of the ARPA funded was budgeted under contractual. However, in FY23, a decision was made to move those non-personnel section of ARPA funded to subsidy and transfer.
Say that last part. I quite what you said.
Sure. In fiscal year 23, the non-personnel section of the ARPA funded budget was moved to subsidy and transfer. That's the change.
Okay, and so does that represent $1.3 million?
That's 1.9 million.
Okay, all right. So it's entirely attributed to it being moved from one place to another in the budget?
Yes.
Okay. What about equipment and equipment rental allocation? Within the proposed FY23 operating budget, the allocation is $826,000, which is 70% increase over the $484,000 allocated in the FY22.
Sure.
I believe that is attributed to the STAR system, which is within our Securities Bureau. So it's a database system that is used for tracking and managing our securities work. And so it is a new system. And so that's what that is attributed to. And that's 400,000 of which is attributed to that.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for that. Let me ask about the DC Market Compliance Enforcement Office. What does that office do? It sounds pretty self-explanatory, but for the benefit of folks who might be at home listening, can you explain what the DC Market Compliance Enforcement Office does?
That office is focused on the compliance of the overall marketplace. And so that would include any compliance enforcement related to insurance, securities, and banking bureaus. And so we have market conduct managers. We also have a market conduct analyst position that we're recruiting for. Overall, the office itself provides technical and administrative support for the bureaus to achieve overall operational and programmatic results. It is also is focused on handling consumer complaints. So it's an important aspect of the work that we do around consumer protection as well.
Okay, what's the budget for that particular office, Commissioner, and how many FTEs fall under that office?
Let me get to that activity line just a moment.
Because it has a pretty significant role in terms of helping to detect and take action against individuals who might be engaged in any financial fraud and some of the investigatory sort of compliance and other related activities. That all falls under that office, right?
That is correct. We don't have any new proposed FTEs for that particular office. The total budget that I'm looking at here is about, I want to say, an increase of $10,000 to the prior budget.
Okay.
So I believe $86,000 total. And the increase is due to some new subscriptions and services, case management system, and additional travel to conferences, and also a new application that we're administering through that office.
Are there new or broad regulatory activities and responsibilities in that office, or are they doing the same things they were doing in previous years?
They're doing the same thing that they've been doing in previous years.
Okay. All right. So the budget appears to, the proposed FY23 budget appears to cut more than $1.5 million from the community outreach and banking. What, if any, programs are going to suffer as a result of that, and why the decision to cut those funds from that particular program?
Those funds were primarily moved. So they're cut out of that budget, but moved to the district recovery line item. So 1.6 billion of those funds were ARPA funded, and that budget was moved to district recovery. That includes our opportunity accounts program and financial coaching for returning citizens. Also, the budget, I believe what was moved out of there is a $52,000 MOU with DOES, and that has also been moved to a new interagency process. There is $150,000 increase to that budget for credit survey for economic mobility, a $10,000 increase for financially fit server maintenance, and a $10,000 increase for travel and training. So overall, the majority of those funds in that budget were moved to a separate line item, and that line item is district recovery.
Okay, is it serving a similar function though, or something that was done through the line item for community outreach? Is that going to cease in FY 2023 in favor of the other activities that you just described?
So there will still be ongoing efforts under community outreach. As I mentioned, activities like our Financially Fit DC program, our summer youth employment program, but the ARPA related funding was sitting in that activity line item in FY22, and that line item has moved to district recovery. So both activities will exist, just the opportunity accounts and the financial coaching associated with the ARPA funds have moved out.
But there's still opera funds that you're spending for those functions?
Still ARPA funds that we're spending for those functions, but not under the community outreach activity line.
And remind me again, you mentioned this in your testimony. How much in ARPA funding does the department have in FY23, and how much did you have overall within your agency's budget, department's budget in FY22?
The total amount, and correct me if I'm wrong, DeRay, I believe is about 1.7 million, and that includes opportunity accounts and also our financial coaching for returning citizens. We had the same amount in FY22. We have the same amount in FY22 and also in FY23.
Okay. What so you of the approximately 1.7 million in ARPA funds for this fiscal year, where are you in terms of spending those dollars?
So we are in the process of spending those dollars down. I will say that we have administered a contract to the United Planning Organization for, actually that's separate, that's not ARPA related. We are in the process of sending out an RFP for the Opportunity Accounts program. And so we're gonna contract that work out, which is the majority of the ARPA funds. We've also already begun engaging with the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens, MORCAS, around our financial coaching for returning citizens work. We also are holding listening sessions around that work with other key partners as we work to formulate what that program will look like. So all in all, the work has already started. We've already begun hiring FTEs. We've hired 2 FTEs for the Opportunity Accounts program. We have 3 additional FTEs that we'll be hiring, and we've already conducted interviews and have a couple of pending offers related to those positions. So overall, the work of the ARPA related funding has already started. We also have a new curriculum that we're going to be using for the financial coaching for returning citizens piece. That work has already been administered, meaning the development of the curriculum has started. So we have expended those funds. And so that's kind of where we're at right now related to the spending of the ARPA funds.
Okay, and I'm trying to get my dates correct here, but did you all have any ARPA funds in your FY21 budget?
We did have, I want to say it was about 100,000, no more, in our budget, and we received those towards the end of the fiscal year. Sure. Okay. But we didn't receive the bulk of the funding until FY22.
Okay, and so have you actually expended, and I appreciate you describing what you plan to do with the ARPA funds, but have you actually expended any of the 1.7 million heretofore?
To my understanding, yes, we have already started to spend the some of the 1.7 million for ARPA funds. And DeRay, I don't know if you have any exact dollar amounts in front of you, but I know that spending has started.
No, I don't have it right now. We'll provide.
In terms of the allocation, you already talked about the programs for the Opportunity Accounts expansion and the financial coach for returning citizens. But is it roughly $1 million for Opportunity Accounts and about $662 or so dollars, $662,000 or so for the financial coach for returning citizens project?
For ARPA, it is roughly $796,000 for the Opportunity Accounts and $485,000 for returning citizens.
Okay, where is the balance going to be used for?
The balance will be used for FTEs.
Okay, and are those included, the FTEs for that are included in the overall numbers that you mentioned earlier, the additional
The 1.7 million total. Yes, the FTEs are included in that.
You may have already touched on this, but I'd love to hear you expound on the Office of Innovation, which appears to be a new office for FY 2023. I understand broadly that the office is supposed to be engaged in innovative and accessible solutions for district residents. If you could talk a little bit more about what you intend to do with that office.
Sure. This is one of the newer aspects of the work that we're doing at DISB, particularly around innovation within the financial services industry. And so the office itself would support the overall development and implementation around responsible innovation for the financial services industry. The office will also support the work of the regulatory sandbox once that legislation has been passed. And I want to thank you again for holding the hearing. We have been working with the OAG to ensure that we can come up with a framework that is going to work for the district. But once that legislation gets enacted, then that will also support the work of the Office of the Innovation. The goal will also be to work collaboratively with other government agencies, with other academic institutions, for-profit entities around attracting technology-based financial products and services here to the district. And so it will support that work. The office will have a director. It'll also have an outreach person, a market analyst person, and a compliance person as well.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. And you touched on the sandbox a bit. I do want to circle back on that. We had a hearing on the measure last week, and we also chatted briefly about it earlier this week. But just for the record, my understanding is that your department and the Office of the Attorney General have recently began discussing potential changes to the consumer protection language in the regulatory sandbox legislation before the committee. Just give me a sense of how those discussions are going and whether you anticipate achieving some degree of consensus around some modifications to the bill as introduced.
Yes, thank you for the question. Since the regulatory sandbox hearing, we have begun to go through the legislation and make some proposed edits to it. We are planning to meet with the OAG next week to discuss those edits and also to come to a compromise around the bill. And so those efforts are currently ongoing. But we did take a lot of the feedback under consideration, and we're factoring that into proposed edits that we're making to the actual bill.
Okay. District recovery plan is in your department's proposed FY23 budget. It appears that there's $1.7 million allocated for it. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Is that the same as the ARPA funds?
Yes, that is the ARPA funds.
Okay.
And that was moved from Activity 5040, which is community outreach under the Banking Bureau.
And these aren't, there's no CARES Act funding as a part of it?
These are solely ARPA funds.
I recall you talking about the Financial Empowerment Center last year. Is the Financial Empowerment Center still something that the department is utilizing to achieve its mission?
Absolutely. So at the department, we are fully committed to the administration of the Financial Empowerment Center, whose mission is designed to promote financial equity and resilience through financial education. We have partnered with the United Planning Organization to administer the Financial Empowerment Center. We have issued an RFP and they responded to that RFP, and we are working with them for the launch of our new Financial Empowerment Center. The first location will be in Ward 8. And we're planning to launch that center, the opening of that center in the spring of this year. So that effort is very much ongoing. We're excited about it. They have already hired 3 counselors, 3 financial counselors. They have been trained through the National Association of Credit Counselors. And so we'll be working with UPO on the administration of the Financial Empowerment Center. We also plan on promoting our other services and work that we're doing around returning citizens and also around financially fit DC, bank on DC, et cetera. So we see this as a great opportunity to extend our work even further. But we're definitely in ongoing conversations with the UPO partners around the administration of our Financial Empowerment Center.
Again, just to make sure I'm clear, how much is this funded through ARPA funds for FY22?
It is not funded through ARPA funds.
Okay.
It's separate funding. The total budget for our Financial Empowerment Center work is approximately $800,000. That includes a grant to United Planning Organization for about $250,000. It also includes consultants, training. We also have a new webinar, live webinar system that we're going to be using. It also supports our Financial Navigators program, which is ongoing and something that we launched during the pandemic.
And will you be continuing the work of the Financial Empowerment Center in FY23? And if so, where would I find that in your budget, in the proposed FY23 budget?
The work of the Financial Empowerment Center will continue in FY23 and beyond. The goal is to expand the program. So we're starting with our first location in Ward 8, but the goal would be to have multiple locations throughout the city. We hope to have our second location in Ward 2. And so that activity you should be able to find under the community outreach line item, if I'm not mistaken, under banking. And that's 50/40.
All right. The committee has spent an extraordinary amount of time over the last 2 years working with small businesses, large employers, workers, and others, along with my colleagues at the council, to support the district's reopening and really trying to get through this pandemic. A lot of what we've been doing has involved agencies under the purview of the committee, agencies like the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development and others. Just talk a little bit about what your role is, if any, with the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking for the district's continued efforts around reopening, the mayor's continued efforts around reopening for FY23 22 and 23, and just what aspects of your budget are going to support that, if any?
Sure, a great question. I will say that during the pandemic, the mayor launched her Reopen Committee, and I served on the committee focused on small businesses here in the district, alongside with my other government partners, including DMPED and DSLBD. And so some of the recommendations that came out of that work were efforts that my team and I actually contributed to, but also efforts that we've been working on with the financial services industry. Early on, it was really around identifying what the needs were from a number of the banks in the district, and what some of the banks were doing to prepare for reopening. And so many of them have been successful in implementing new changes and reopening with safety in mind. And so that effort very much has been underway. As it relates to the department and how we're supporting the reopening efforts, the work that we do through the DC BizCap program has really been centered around supporting small businesses in the district. A number of the businesses that we have worked with, and we do have a growing pipeline of businesses, are also businesses that some of the other district government agencies have been supporting as well. A good example of which is Spe, which is one of the businesses that have utilized funding from our office. And I know that a number of other government agencies have also supported Spe as well. We also have partnership with DCRA around our Coffee and Capital series. And so we promote that heavily. We have one this month focused on venture capital, where we're actually featuring the owner of Spe and Melissa Bradley talking about venture capital. We also have partnerships with key banks. We work very closely and communicate directly with DMPED and DSLBD around a number of their efforts, especially related to this 2.0 version of the SSBCI program. So in short, the majority of our work that's centered around reopening is primarily focused on our DC BizCap program.
Okay, and along those lines, let me ask about the SSBCI funding. You mentioned in your testimony that later this year, the district is going to receive $62 million in federal SSBCI funding as a part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And I'm referencing page 3 of your testimony. I want to say that DISB will collaborate with the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development to provide additional funds for district-based small businesses through new and improved programs. So I want to take a moment just to hear you talk a little bit more about that collaboration with DMPED. Let me, before you respond, just also give a shout out to the Spe Suite and all the great work that they are doing as a DC minority-owned, women-owned business in the city. So I appreciate you referencing the Spe Suite. But if you could talk about the work that you're doing with DMPED specifically, to administer $62 million in federal SSBCI funding. What role is DISB there, and have you all worked out specifically what your responsibilities are going to be vis-a-vis DMPED?
Absolutely. So DISB has been working with DMPED on the American Rescue Plan Act funding. We collaborated around the district's joint application that was submitted to the U.S. Treasury Department on February 11th. That application has been submitted. The total amount that the U.S. Treasury Department allocated for the district was a total amount of about $62 million. And so in conversation with DMPED, we decided that we were going to split that amount. So 26 would go to DMPED, and the other half would come to the department. The focus is really around ensuring that we can continue to administer aspects of the BizCap program that have been successful, like our collateral support program, and DMPED would focus on a venture capital program. And so those conversations have been underway. We are excited about the collaboration. We're even more excited about what these dollars will do to support the small business ecosystem and help to grow even more small businesses here in the district. And so we're waiting right now to hear back from the Treasury Department around how much we're going to actually receive, but also when we can start implementing those programs.
So which agency is actually going to be the recipient? How does that work? If let's just assume that you'll get the amount that you requested, $62 million. Where does that money actually get loaded in the budget? Which agency?
Those funds would get loaded into DISB's budget, and then we'll send those dollars to DMPED through an interagency MOU. Okay,
and you said about half, but
yes.
I think it's $26 million. So would literally half go to DMPED and half would go to DISB?
Yes, we'll get a little more than half actually, based upon the allocation that I mentioned, but DMPED will receive $26 million.
Okay. And this may be a bit redundant, but I do want to make sure I understand that the committee is aware of the plans here. And I'll likely ask DMPED a similar question when we have their budget oversight hearing later on. But is the goal for DISB to administer these funds in a way that is different than what DMPED is doing specifically? And are you going to be administering these funds in the form of loans, grants, or how do you plan to? Have you gotten to that point yet in terms of how it's going to be administered?
We've been in discussion around the administration of the program and what it's going to look like. Because these are dollars that are coming from the Treasury Department and there's restrictions around it, the funds can only be used to loan to businesses. Now, we can grant out to a CDFI, but we cannot directly give grants to businesses through these dollars. And so it's a unique structure, but we've had plenty of conversations with lenders, with other CDFIs and other states that have also administered the program around what is the best way to structure it and what is the quickest way to get the funds out the door. And so those conversations have been underway at the department. We will continue to focus on the collateral support program and also the innovation finance program. And the discussions we've had with DMPED to date, they'll be focusing on establishing a venture capital program.
Okay, all right. I definitely want to follow that closely. I know we in the committee in 2020 for the 2021 fiscal year established an access to capital fund. And we appreciate the mayor's collaboration because she increased the funding for that fund last year for this year's fiscal year budget, which is a little confusing to say that there's I don't remember the exact amount, but there's several $1 million in the access to capital fund that the committee created a couple of years ago. And you mentioned Melissa Bradley, but I really appreciate her involvement because she's done a lot of great work in this space. And so we obviously want to follow that really closely.
Absolutely.
Coming to the end of my questions. Two things, overtime and travel. How much did the agency spend in overtime pay in FY21? And how much, if any, has the agency spent in overtime pay to date in FY22?
Just a moment. In FY21, it was approximately $4,400.
Okay, and how many? You know how many FTEs that's attributable to, or?
I don't have the exact amount. In FY22, it was 23,000. And I recall during the performance oversight hearing that this is a similar question. And the majority of that was actually a payout to one of our retirees for overtime over the course of her time with the department.
Okay. And in terms of travel, I know in FY20, we, at this point, we're really at the beginning of the pandemic, and travel was pretty much down to a halt. So what was the travel budget for the department in FY21? What is it in FY22, and what's the proposed budget for FY23 as we, knock on wood, begin to open up? And I imagine there'll be some efforts by your staff to do some professional development and other activities in the various industries that you have purview over.
Definitely, as you stated, in FY20, pretty much travel came to a halt, and FY21 travel slowly began to pick up. I would have to probably follow up with you with exact dollar amounts. The way our travel budget is set up is across each of the different activities throughout the department. There are a range of different travel and training budgets. We don't have a cumulative line item for all travel, but I'll have to follow up with you on exact numbers for FY21, 22, and also what is proposed for FY23.
Okay. All right. CBE spending, just if you remind me, I may have asked this on performance, but I'd love to just make sure the record is complete. What was your SBE goal for FY21, and where'd you end up? What's the goal for FY22? Are you on track for it?
For FY21, if I recall, during my performance oversight hearing, the goal was 2.5 million. We spent to date about 859,000. We have been in communication with DSLBD around the system that they use for tracking the SBE goals. We are anticipating a final SBE spend goal from DSLBD by the end of March. But as of now, we don't have the final goal for FY21. I will say that the department has been a staunch supporter of the CBE program. And when the numbers are final, we always not only meet our goal, but we also exceed our goal as well. We anticipate for FY22 in similar fashion for the SBE goal to be adjusted down. Currently, it's about 4.3 million, and we have about 972,000 in PO allocation, and we've spent 238,000 to date. But again, we expect that goal number to be adjusted down, and the majority of our spending takes place in the third and fourth quarters of the performance period.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions at the moment. If there's any follow-up in the committee, we'll be sure to reach out. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we transition?
I did just want to add, I know you had a question around the number of DC BizCap companies, particularly minority-owned businesses that we've invested in, and how much of those dollars have been invested in minority businesses. And to date, the dollar amount is about 7.5 million.
Okay, out of how much?
Out of 13 million.
Got it. Okay. All right. So over half. All right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the information, but it does mean though, if it's slightly over 50%, and I think the number you mentioned earlier was that of the businesses that were participating, I think 75% were minority, correct?
Correct.
Which means the proportionately less of it is going to minority-owned businesses, and there's a greater proportion going to non-minority-owned businesses. Would my math be accurate?
They're minority and women-owned.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the information, and we're going to take just a minute, but then we're going to transition to our next agency. Thank you, Commissioner.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Thank you for the work that you're doing on the council. Also want to thank the mayor for her work and the staff of the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our next agency that we're going to hear from is the Department of Small Business Development, or DSLBD. The department's mission is to support the development, economic growth, and retention of district-based businesses and to promote the economic development throughout the district's commercial corridor. To further that aim, the department provides assistance and services to district-based businesses by positioning them to compete successfully for local, federal, and international business opportunities, providing workshops and training and certifying companies to operate in the district. The DSLBD proposed fiscal year 2023 operating budget is $21,238,613, which is a 1.3% decrease over the approved fiscal year 2022 budget of $21,720,998. The proposed operating budget supports 59.3 FTEs, which is a 5.9% increase from the approved fiscal year 22 operating budget. Additionally, the department is set to receive $500,000 from the capital budget in the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget, a 30.6% decrease from the $720,000 from the capital budget in the approved fiscal year 2022 budget. With that, I'm going to turn to our government witness, Director Christy Whitfield and her team for her testimony. And good morning, Director Whitfield. It's good to see you. You can get your testimony whenever you, actually, let me just check and make sure I don't see any of my colleagues. I'm likely to be joined by a colleague or two, but I'm going to turn to you now for your testimony. Thanks.
Good morning, Chairman McDuffie. Can you hear me? Great. Good morning, Chairman McDuffie, members of the council, residents of the District of Columbia, and the local business community. My name is Christy C. Whitfield, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director of the Department of Small and Local Business Development, also known as DSLBD. As a staunch advocate of shopping local, shopping small, and supporting our local businesses overall, I am so grateful for the opportunity to testify today on the key investments included in Mayor Bowser's fiscal year 2023 Fair Shop budget that will further contribute to the recovery, progress, and cultivation of our district-based businesses and entrepreneurs. This budget furthers the shared goals of both the executive and the council by expanding access to opportunities and pathways to success for every single district resident. As you may recall, during last month's performance oversight hearing, I talked about how DSLBD is expanding opportunities by disrupting the status quo. And I noted that one way we are achieving this is by focusing on best equipped citizens from traditionally marginalized populations with the tools they need through innovative programming and expanded resources. The investments made in the mayor's $19.5 billion budget supports the continuance of this essential work and drives forward the agency's mission to support the growth of local entrepreneurs, the retention of district-based businesses, and the revitalization along our economic corridors while focusing on tailored supports and services for our most vulnerable entrepreneurs. The mayor's FY23 request for DSLBD includes $21.4 million in local operating funds, $500,000 towards capital improvements, and $553 in federal grant funds. I would like to take the time to highlight a few of the equity-focused investments today. The FY23 budget underscores the need to support the district's returning citizens with an enhancement of $175,000 to restore total Aspire program funding to $250,000. Aspire provides direct support to returning citizen-led small businesses and entrepreneurs. With this increased funding, the department can provide more financial and technical assistance to our justice-involved residents. Such funding is critical because we know that to break a cycle of recidivism, returning citizens need gainful employment. This is why Aspire is so impactful. Residents re-entering society face unique challenges to job security, and launching one's own business can empower participants to overcome this challenge. I'm happy to report that today there are 103 Aspire alumni. So if you are a returning citizen and interested in starting, growing, or maintaining a business in the district, please consider applying for this year's Aspire cohort by the April 1 deadline. Mayor Bowser also continues to place an emphasis on supports for micro businesses east of the river. Her FY23 budget invests an additional $300,000 into the Dream Grants program for a total of $500,000 because when our neighborhood entrepreneurs and community businesses succeed, our residents succeed. To date, DSLBD has awarded more than 70 small businesses in Ward 7 and 8, a total of $700,000 in grants. And we are currently accepting applications until April 1 from this year's prospective grantees. Additionally, the mayor's budget included $300,000 to continue the district's equity cannabis initiatives designed to support the district's residents, particularly returning citizens and veterans wishing to enter the competitive high barrier legal cannabis industry. In thinking about how to best administer this year's funding to maximize impact and advance equity, DSLBD engaged over 500 residents, entrepreneurs, community stakeholders, and agency partners, notably ABRA, through a series of salons. These salons informed the department's work going forward in how to best make inroads for residents wishing not only to enter this industry, but also how to best sustain this competitive market. Chairman, I very much look forward to working with you throughout the remainder of this fiscal year to advance our goal and discuss ways we can work together to use these funds to realize a shared vision of wealth building for those who were previously foreclosed from such opportunities in this market. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention specific investments in our retailers. To further accelerate the recovery of our retailers citywide, the mayor's FY23 budget invests $500,000 in dedicated local funds to support DSLBD's popular Robust Retail Grant Program, which will guarantee that the department can extend this form of support to businesses along the corridors as we continue to recover. We know that COVID-19 caused dramatic shifts in pre-pandemic retail spending trends. Nevertheless, our retailers remained resilient. DSLBD established the Robust Retail Grant Program in 2019 to assist businesses in combating the detrimental effects of the federal government shutdown. Since, DSLBD pivoted its use, and the grant program became a lifeline to many retailers battling the disruption caused by the pandemic. To date, the department has awarded more than $1.7 million to nearly 200 different retail establishments. And with this infusion of local funds, DSLBD looks forward to maximizing its financial assistance to local retailers. And the fact is that robust retail, which traditionally relied on fines levied from non-compliant primes, would not have come into existence without the diligence, attention to detail, and enforcement of DSLBD's compliance staff. The mayor's FY23 budget supports 2 necessary additional FTEs in this division to further support the dynamic work that DSLBD's Compliance and Enforcement Division has undertaken in the past years. I know that compliance and enforcement has been a priority for council and remains a priority for the executive as well. When I first assumed the role as the director of DSLBD over 4 years ago, I heard from district businesses that were skeptical of the Certified Business Enterprise, the CBE program, because they believed that non-bona fide local enterprises could get certified. Additional FTEs will continue to ensure that these concerns are ameliorated and that the department can continue its transformational work in this area. But compliance is only as strong as the laws it can enforce. And therefore, we need to also couple more FTEs with updated laws that close the current loopholes. And I understand that no law is perfect. And as bad actors find ways to skirt the rules, there's always a need for improvement. As I continue to converse with local business community members and stakeholders, I hear positive things about Mayor Bowser's proposed CBE amendments to make these needed fixes and understand that CBEs want and deserve permanent solutions to such as those that B24-46, the Supporting Local Business Enterprise Amendment Act of 2021 offers. And this is why I look very much forward to working with council to solidify the ways to tighten the letter of the law and to close these gaps so the CBE program aligns more closely with the spirit of helping genuine local businesses. And I urge the council to move this bill forward as soon as possible. Lastly, the mayor's budget makes $500,000 in capital improvements towards the finalization of the district enterprise system. This system will ultimately support the work of all of DSLB's divisions, namely certification and compliance, and will allow our agency to continue its momentum in strengthening the integrity of the CBE program for the district and the over 1,980 participating businesses, as well as overall programmatic grant administration. I know I say it often, but I cannot say it enough. I'd like to thank the staff at DSLBD for their continued commitment to the small and local businesses community. And of course, Mayor Bowser for her leadership and for proposing these impactful in DSLBD's programs. Also, I look forward to working in partnership with the council in ensuring the sustainability and continued growth and success of our local businesses. And I would like to assure the members of the public that the district government remains open for business and ready to serve you. In closing, thank you again, Chairman McDuffie, for the opportunity to testify today. I'm happy to answer any questions about Mayor Bowser's FY23 budget at this time. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony, Director Whitfield. I do have some questions for you. And I appreciate that you started your testimony out talking about some of the equity initiatives that you're working on. I want to give you an opportunity to just highlight the one that you think is most impactful. I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if that's coming from, okay. Just highlight the one that you think is the most impactful. And if there is anything new in DSLBD's budget to address racial equity in terms of economic opportunity for minority or women-owned businesses. Is there anything that you all are doing in the FY23 proposed budget that you're not currently doing? If not, just one thing that perhaps you have found to be most impactful, or you've gotten feedback from minority women-owned businesses that they believe that the work of the agency is most impactful in what particular area? And I'm going to just because I think when we're both open, there's a little bit of feedback.
Okay, Councilmember, can you hear me right now? Okay. So, you know, I really do feel like all of the work of DSLBD is impactful in the areas of equity. I believe that our efforts to help businesses promote themselves and follow their dreams as they are sort of employing people and offering services in the district are, it's very difficult to choose one because they're all my children, right? I would say that, if we looked broadly, the fact that we broke the barrier of $1 billion spent with SBEs last year was deeply impactful because I think that was historic, and it shows something that previously people thought could not be done. And then setting that as a goal, I think is something that is out in front of people, is saying, hey, these are goals that previously seemed unattainable. But I also think that our Made in DC grants that had previously also not happened for DSLBD were impactful and a bastion of equity, because we know that starting something as simple as making earrings in your home that then becomes a business that you grow and grow and grow. I feel like the work in the Grow Golden, where we are sort of meeting the issues of recovery head on and matching property owners with potential business owners and making matches and putting people in real estate that was previously unaffordable and unattainable, and starting a new future for those businesses, the DC Pop-Up and Spice Suite and Ohm, and we've got another one opening soon and other businesses coming in. I mean, I think, the majority of those businesses that are now starting in the Golden Triangle are run by people of color, and is changing the face and the landscape of that environment. I think that is deeply impactful and speaks to racial equity. Our Aspire program, which we ran as an Aspire pitch competition, when returning citizens who have a particular difficulty reincorporating into their lives, coming and starting their businesses, as important as shine a light and the work that they can do, but also send a message to their friends and family about starting their businesses, hiring other returning citizens, and making a brand new way for themselves. I mean, I think that's impactful. Joel Caston was a member of the last Aspire cohort, the first incarcerated elected official. I think these are bastions of hope and light. I think that entrepreneurs through this pandemic, before and after, send these messages of hope throughout the entire community of what is possible. And when we hold those out, then we are sort of setting a new bar for what should be. And all of our programs, whether they are whether they're in the main streets, whether they are in the cultural economy through Art All Night, whether it's as simple as somebody saying, I want to start a business and I'm going to try and procure with the government. I mean, they're all relevant. So I think, the last thing I will mention is that we did some important work with access to capital this year. both our DC Kiva hub and also work with Life Assets in Ward 8. I know underbanked and unbanked entrepreneurs continue to be something that's passionate, I think, to both of us. And when we make sure that we show people that, you know, just because entrepreneurs are non-traditional doesn't mean that they are unworthy. We are balancing the scales of equity and giving people opportunities. And so being able to, again, you know, lead by example and give people the chances and opportunities and offer that example through fair shot and actual access. I mean, it's impossible for me to choose.
So you mentioned a number of programs. I want to just hone in for a moment on the Aspire program. I think it is something that you all started some years ago with, where a lot of people were hopeful of the success of that program. And I know there've been a number of individuals, returning citizens, who started businesses working with your office. The reality, though, is that many businesses that start don't always remain open. Right? It's just a fact. Have you all sort of kept up with the participants, the Aspire participants, to understand how many of them to date are still running successful businesses, notwithstanding the horrible impacts of the pandemic? There likely going to be lots of businesses, not likely, there are lots of businesses that start in the district that don't remain open. I'm hopeful that won't be the case for Aspire participants, but I wanted to know whether you all are tracking that and you have some insights and some data about that. And if there are a couple of those Aspire businesses that are still open and thriving that you want to highlight. You're on mute, Director.
Many of our Aspire businesses continue to open, continue to remain open. I think that, let me say that there have been plenty of challenges through the pandemic, right? Let me call out Flick Shop is, I think, still open. So shout out to Flick Shop who's out there. I'll ask my team to, of course, Will Avila is another great example of an Aspire graduate who continues to run a very thriving business in the community.
Sure.
Let me say that many people do stay in touch with us, and we stay in touch with them as they continue their journey, and we remain available to the alumni to remain connected. Sometimes people come through Aspire and they think about joining, starting a business, and maybe they start a business, and sometimes they might come through Aspire and decide that running a business isn't for them. That education is still a win. Sometimes they run their business for a period of time and it works for them and they find other opportunities. And that can also be a win. The data of simply is a business open or closed, I think might not have all of the benefits of what going through that program. Some of the feedback that we're getting from the ongoing communication with the participants. Obviously, we want businesses to stay open, and many of the participants that are open continue to hire, members of the community and other returning citizens. But I think that sometimes we have a little bit of a narrow band. If someone decides that this entrepreneurial lifestyle is draining and taxing, which it can be, and they have the self-determination to make that decision for themselves and do something different, that is also okay. The process of making those choices for themselves is also still a win.
Let me just jump in a little bit, because I want to say, and thank you for your response. I'm interested in the full picture of how the program is working. And so if you can, with your team's help, just maybe follow up with the committee. I'd love to know just what that full picture looks like. So if there's a narrative that you include about a business that opened a couple of years ago, but then closed because of the pandemic, or closed because they wanted to, start some other joint with somebody else that didn't require the assistance of the client, then I'm interested in the full picture. But I would like to know how things are going, and because I still hear when I'm out in the community occasionally, people talk about that program with the level of interest, appreciation. So it would be helpful for us to just know how things are going there. Let me turn though. So if you get back to us, that'd be great. And let me ask about the DES system. I know in our February performance oversight hearing this year, the district's enterprise system is an important tool for furthering racial equity in the district, with the system hopefully being completed in FY23. Talk a little bit that DSLBD envisions for the DES system in terms of racial equity in the district once it's completed.
I think that generally and generically, transparency is great for equity, because when we see where money is and we see where opportunity is, then then I think we can help people compete in a level playing field. One of the great things about the DES is it is helping us, make more transparent, for the CBE community where the opportunities are and where the and then where the data is. So we are hoping to finish the compliance component of the DES system this spring. And one of the things that you and I have discussed, the waiver opportunity within the procurement process is a real opportunity for CBEs to raise their hand and say, wait a minute, before you grant that waiver, DSLBD, acknowledge me, help me raise my hand and be seen by this procurement process. The DES, and CBEs sometimes would feel like they have to send an email and bang a drum and copy the entire world because they were getting lost in the sauce. The DES helps that proverbial raised hand get recognized in the system and makes it, much more difficult to ignore. You say, wait, Christy Whitfield has raised her hand. The system acknowledges that. The contracting officer gets, it gets recognized in the system, and everyone has to acknowledge that they've seen this. I think that making sure that people can see the opportunities, it's already allowing people to subscribe to the opportunities that they're the most interested in. One of the things that, the law currently requires that we post and send all the waivers out to people, and that results in people getting spammed. You can subscribe to the waivers that you're the most interested in. And I think that will then cull through.
Okay. Let me just, I want to note that we've been rejoined by Ward 4 Councilmember Janice Lewis George, and we're going to give you a round in just a moment. But before I do so, I want to go down just to briefly a line of questions regarding the Main Streets programs, Director Whitfield. There's a lot of interest in our public witness portion of our oversight on Monday, and I think really helpful and insightful testimony about the Main Streets program. And so I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the program. Maybe I'm pretty sure you're really great at listening to public witness testimony. And so I'm sure you heard some of it, and your team was probably tracking it. But in the proposed FY23 budget, DSLBD provides $150,000, a little bit more than that, $150,080 in grant funding to each Main Street program. Do you all have enough money allocated to ensure every Main Street program has enough funding to provide a living wage to its employees, but also to really provide the services that I know you want to see the Main Streets programs provide. One of the estimates I think we got from one of the public witnesses, maybe District Bridges, was that the average Main Streets program costs approximately $185,000 to run, which is less than the amount that's allocated to each in the proposed FY23 budget and the current budget as well. And that amount is equal with the Main Streets, regardless of whether Main Street has 20 businesses or 200 businesses along its corridor. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond to the amount that you have in your budget for proposed FY23 budget, and whether you think it covers the need that the Main Streets have and the businesses, frankly, have that they work with.
Yes, thank you for that. I, of course, was listening to all of the public testimony. Our Main Streets are a fantastic program, and the mayor, has more than doubled the Main Streets in our city during her tenure. I think it's important to note that that our Main Streets are funded at a greater level than any other program in the city, in the nation. We have some of the most creative and innovative Main Streets anywhere across the country. And I think it shows because we also have some of the most lauded Main Streets of anywhere in the country. Money, of course, is a zero-sum game, right? And what we always want to do is make sure we're optimizing and getting the most for our businesses in this great program. I think we have a lot of really important opportunities, in terms of how we could optimize the resources that go to our businesses. And there's a lot of steps that we can discuss around how to make sure those resources are being best optimized. You also heard, and I've been, I am a big one for efficiencies and economies of scale. And I've spoken with the Main Street executive directors about this. If we have 26 Main Streets, there's no reason for 26 Main Street directors to be doing technical assistance on the same thing. Like, we need to make sure that we are driving efficiency through the Main Streets, and making sure that we have a cohort of Main Street resources that are made available for 28 Main Streets. I'm sorry, my team's correcting me. 28 Main Streets. If we have expertise in back office support or how to make something, how to arrange your shelves, we can have them train on that and make that training available to everyone, and have another one do training and TA for something else. But right now we have a lot of duplication across Main Streets that is not the highest and best use of local dollars. There are a lot of ways that we can think about optimizing local dollars that can get resources into the mines and then also pockets of the Main Streets. You're muted, sir.
I'm muted. Let me really try to hone in on that a bit, because one of the ways that was suggested during testimony of improving the program perhaps was suggested by several witnesses. I think many of them affiliated with District Bridges, but even some that weren't. They suggested a tiered approach, a tiered budget structure for the Main Streets program, by which Main Streets programs are funded based on the number of businesses within each program, with $180,000 for programs with less than 100 businesses, $225,000 for programs with between 100 and 200 businesses, and $250,000 for programs with more than 200 businesses. Are you familiar with the proposal, and do you have any thoughts on it?
I am familiar with that. That's a conversation that is not new in any way. So Martin Smith also testified something similar to that, and I think Councilmember Nadeau, has been having. These are conversations that have been been kicking around for quite some time. I think it is interesting to think about a tiered approach, but I am cautious about a blunt instrument that doesn't take into account other factors in the neighborhood, because, you know, density is one thing, but then we also have sort of disparity of need. And we also have to talk about the preparedness of that area and neighborhood, right?
So can I, again, that's a great point, and I don't mean to interrupt, but it sounds similar to a point that I raised in response to that testimony, which is I can see where it could be helpful, frankly, and I want to explore that with the folks who suggested it. I obviously would love to know that the agency, if there's going to be some changes made, will buy into whether those changes are and think that they're going to be effective. But I did raise issues around equity, right? Because density is one thing, and perhaps we should have a different structure for businesses that have a greater amount of businesses in a corridor. But, you know, we're given the same amount to a Main Streets and Anacostia or Pennsylvania Avenue and Ward 7 account for some of the historical constraints to access to capital and other business challenges in those areas, if they get the same amount based on the number of businesses that they have as some other corridor that historically hasn't faced the same types of constraints, or maybe has a different demographic that they're trying to serve, maybe has fewer, you know, access to healthy foods. I raise the fact that there are a number of other agencies that might also weigh in, so maybe the Main Streets isn't a panacea, but I wanted to throw that question out before I turn to Councilmember Janice Lewis-George and see if you have a quick response to that.
Well, I think there are a series of things that have to be considered because, you know, the ironically, in a dense area, you may have more opportunity there. You know, the Main Streets are also responsible for fundraising. So, you know, this might not be popular, and there may be more opportunity, which might mean that in a less dense area, maybe there should be more money going. Like, we have to, when we're thinking about equity, we have to broaden the way we're doing it. I'm open to all of the discussions. You know, the National Main Street is also looking at, you know, the National Main Street is also looking at, you know, models of, you know, evaluation in all of this. I think that, you know, COVID has shown us, you know, a myriad of lenses to look at how to solve a problem. And I think that we have to just be open to a broader conversation about, one, how to work together. You know, I think that what I will say is that we have to have a DC Main Street model where we don't have little fiefdoms of neighborhoods. The resources have to be able to cross-fertilize, because some of that training and technical assistance needs to be able to go across a neighborhood, especially technology.
All right, I'm gonna pick up on Main Streets when I come back for another round, and I want to pick up the suggestion by Yvette Banks that we consider more of a comprehensive evaluation of the ecosystem around Main Street and small business and the corridors. And the other thing I want to pick up on when I come back is the living wage and our clean team workers and some of the concerns that I think still exist there. But I'm going to turn to my colleague, friend, Ward 4 Council Member Janice Lewis for a 10-minute round. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Councilmember Duffy. Listen, I think you have the same prep documents, because you were going down all the questions I had in your last round, and I was like, this is great. Wonderful. So I'm going to pick up a little bit on the clean team piece. I'll let you take most of that, the rest of that Main Street piece, but I wanted to ask a little bit about clean teams. Is clean team funding, and sorry, good morning, Director.
Good morning. Good morning.
We have like 10 hearings going on at one time, so I'm like literally jumping around. So I want to take a pause to say good morning. Okay. Is clean team funding equal for each grantee, regardless of geography or volume of traffic or businesses present in the corridor? So it's the same way, you know, I'm just trying to give, go ahead.
No, it's not. The clean team, those contracts are, I believe, are not equal. They are, I think, scaled more depending on the size of the location, I believe.
Like the size of the corridor.
Mhm.
Okay.
More or less, but I think what ended up happening is invariably people then ask, can we expand it? Can we expand it? And you know, the boundaries get expanded, but the budgets do not.
Right. That's exactly the point I'm going to right here. You're with me. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to figure out. So would DSLBD, I guess, be open to providing additional funding to a grantee responsible for a large geographical area or an area with larger average foot traffic? And so I'm asking that because some concern in Ward 4, we have, you know, our Upper Georgia Avenue, and then we have Lower Georgia Avenue, but there's the clean team nodes are pretty long, like, you know, geography wise, there's a lot there, a lot of volume of foot traffic, a lot of business is there. And I think getting to the point that I think Councilman Duffy is going to come back around to is right now it's feeling like the amount of individuals on a clean team don't match or not enough for the amount of work that they have to complete is what I'm getting at here. And so my concern is that the clean team may not have sufficient resources to sustain their responsibilities. And I'm thinking for us, which extends all the way from like Eastern Avenue all the way down to New Hampshire. And I believe that's 2 separate teams. And so I am the one asking, can we expand, but I'm not expanding the geography here. I'm asking, how can I make the team more robust, like add members to the team. So I'm just trying to get to the point of how much does it cost if I wanted to not expand the geography, but include more workers within the current clean teams. What would that cost figure be? What would that look like? And I'm asking because in my letter to Chairman McDuffie, I'm going to say, hey, we need additional members on our clean team, and this is the reason why. So I'm just trying to get down to a number. On
average, each clean, like an FTE costs about $50,000. So the amounts that are put in for each clean team are put in by the council, right? And so then we compete the grants based on the amounts that are put in by the council. And so.
Okay.
So you have the power, Councilwoman, to, you know,
okay,
and what it is. And then I think, you know, the other piece that I just want, and I know because you and I have been in conversation and I'm acutely aware of some of the issues there. You know, there is always this need. There's a bleed, right? There's trash blows, and then you ultimately get calls from residents that are 1 block or 2 blocks or 3 blocks off a corridor. One thing that is sort of resolute is that the clean teams are a commercial program, and they are for commercial corridors, right? Okay. So we have to remain resolute that, you know, that the clean teams are for commercial corridors. So that is something that I just want to put on the record.
I hear you. And I think I've said this before. I think it's something that we have to promote more, because I know the problem is on a lot of our commercial corridors, a lot of side streets are getting a lot of trash, and that would be DPW responsibility versus a clean team. I'm just hoping there's a way for them to communicate, work in concert to sort of to deal with some of those issues. But what I'm hearing you say is, if I wanted to increase the number of clean team members on a clean team that has a large geography or volume or foot traffic, that we can do that through the budget. Is there a specific like number, or is it different with each team as to how much we should be asking for additional members? Is it that granular?
It is actually that granular because it
Okay.
really depends on the volume of that corridor, right? And so when you have a particularly high trafficked corridor, or a corridor with a bus route, or a corridor with a lot of trash cans, or a corridor that is on a route where school children travel, then you're going to have more trash. And so I think then, then you're going to need a lot more trash. And if you have a sleepier corridor, then it's less. And so then it's highly, you could have a long corridor that 2 crew members could keep reasonably clean, but that same corridor with, with those other elements that I just mentioned, particularly heavily trafficked bus routes with transfers,
Right.
then you're going to have a lot, right? And so then when we do this to our clean teams and then we stretch them very thin, we set them up for failure.
Absolutely.
And then the other piece that I think is a consideration is that, these are living wage jobs and they are usually full-time jobs. But there are opportunities for like maybe part-time interventions if we know that this particular corridor is more heavily trafficked on the weekend, or this, places where they have farmers markets or different things. And so then we know we need to, on Thursday afternoons, maybe we need another part-time person that comes. So I think it is granular. And so that, if we don't want to have people complaining, like, how come every Friday morning I walk through a sea of trash, and the clean teams understand the nature and the flow of that trash. But it is a funding, it's a funding and a body's contemplation, because these jobs, they follow they follow behind the traffic of rush hour or workflow or schools or festivals.
Got it.
That's the way.
All right. I want to head out because I gotta go to like 3 other hearings at the same time. I want to ask about, unfortunately. So want to see, we have a few main streets. I want to specifically, can you share an update on our Petworth Main Street? I was proud to work with Chairman McDuffie to secure funding for this investment in the fiscal year 2022 budget. And I just want to get a sense of where we are. Do we have an executive director hired yet? Have they given out any sub grants? If they have any leftover funds in fiscal year 2022, because they're getting started so late, do they get to keep any of that funding? And I think the budget book under reoccurring budget says there's a $770,000 reduction of one-time funding for the Petworth Main Street. And I didn't know what that was. So I just want to confirm that we're keeping this new Main Street.
Okay, well, I will start at the, so the Petworth, I know was designated in October. There is an interim ED that has been hired. There were some sub grants that they expect to be designated in May. The funds that they are on track for spending their money. They've got a Porch Fest that's scheduled for April 15th.
Yeah, April 30th. It's my birthday.
Oh, is it? Oh, all right. I think the 15th.
Porch Fest is April 30th. It's my birthday. I'm making sure they have.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just joking. Go ahead.
All right. We'll confirm. My team's telling me the 15th, but I'll confirm.
Okay.
Miss it. I don't want you to miss it. Happy early birthday. I think that and then with regard to reduction, the budget works. You get $200,000 in the first year, and then a $150 and $80 in the second year. So it's not necessarily a reduction. It's just that first year you get more, and you get less in the second year. And so we are.
Okay. So I guess they're in their first. I guess they're just starting their first year. I just want to make sure like they have a good start. So you said you get more in your first year, and so are we considering from October of this fiscal year through this coming October to be their first year?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
And my team's telling me all their sub grants should be dispersed by the 30th. They're looking for a bilingual executive director, which is why their ED search is taking them a little bit longer than they might have hoped.
Okay, so, because I'm wondering if we should, I don't want them to, if we could total it from when they have an ED and their grants are dispersed versus when they were technically, when the fiscal year started is what I guess I'm trying to get at.
Oh, yeah. The law does not allow that.
Okay.
That's local funds, but those funds sounds like they will be fully dispersed and they're on tap. They're not going to lose any money, it sounds like.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was the case. Oh, it looks like my first round is up. Councilman McDuffie, am I going to get another round?
Oh, yeah, you sure are. We're gonna
Okay, great.
for a while. I've got some more questions as well.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I'll do another 10-minute round.
I'm gonna hop over to judiciary and I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George. Director Whitfield, I want to pick up where I left off. The Main Street program and the Clean Teams programs, as like you're aware, obviously, from a lot of questions from myself and Councilmember Lewis George, are important, and I know you agree with that. But I want to ask you about the funding for the programs in the budget. It appears that the proposed FY23 budget would cut $200,000 from the Main Streets program and $255,000 from the Clean Teams programs. Is that accurate? You're muted. And I hope you're telling me that that's not accurate. You're still muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Sure, yeah.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry, I was having some little technical difficulty there. So there is an actual reduction, and I will, if you know, it says it's a cut, right? But it's, I think which sounds, and Curtis can maybe explain this a little bit differently, but first year programs get $200,000. And then in the second year, they get $150,000. And so then we had several first year programs last year, and they're in their, and so that's why, so there's an appropriate second year funding that shows it in the funds.
And if you could just explain the difference between the allocation of $200,000 for a first year program versus the budget following the first year of $150,000. What things are supposed to occur in that first year that you do not expect to occur in the subsequent years? Director, I didn't hear your response. Seems like you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right. Am I logged into that? All right. Like I think initial like organizational startup costs for the nonprofit. Usually,
Okay.
You know.
Okay, and that's for the Main Street specifically. And how many first year programs that will be in their second year with a reduced budget in FY23? I guess if you could just break down with that $200,000 relates to how many different Main Streets, if that's the specific reason for the reduction. I mean, I don't want to assume that it's 4 Main Streets that are getting $50,000 less. But
so with the yes, it's the it's only in the Main Streets programs, and it's with
Director,
training, and there's,
I'm not sure what happened to your signal, but it certainly is not appear to be as strong as it was previously because you're freezing a bit.
my team here, I'm Councilmember, let me log out and come, let me.
Okay, all right, let's take a moment. We'll take a brief moment to allow you to do that. And for those who may be watching online, we're just gonna take a moment. I'm not gonna adjourn, but I'm gonna take a moment to allow the director to log out and log back. And do you think you need to do that, Director?
Yeah, I'm gonna log out and then log right back in.
We'll take a couple of minutes. And we'll just wait for you to turn your video back on, and that's when we'll resume.
Yeah.
And welcome back, Director. You're muted.
All right. Hopefully this does a little better for us here.
Yeah, I had asked before we took a break, I had asked about $200,000 reduction in the Main Streets program and a $255,000 reduction in the Clean Teams program.
So with regards to the main streets, we had 4 main streets that were new. And then that's a change between their first year and second year, right? So Avenue, Palisades, Petworth, and Chevy Chase. So
Okay.
with regard to the clean reduction, let me get back to one. I'm not certain on a clean teams reduction.
Is it a similar?
No, I think we
Similar in terms
actually, hold on, actually.
Because there's startup costs, I know with Clean Teams, where sometimes the allocation is, or at least that was my understanding, it would be higher maybe in the first year for equipment, tools, and things like that, no?
We do have some startup costs, but we also had a couple of teams that did not continue.
Well, if you could get back to me on that.
Let me get back to you on the clean team adjustment.
And then let me ask another Clean Teams related question though. are all the clean teams required to pay their workers the same minimum amount? I know there's some folks who have longer tenure, maybe supervisory positions, but so the baseline.
All the clean teams pay a living wage.
Okay. And that's something that you and your team track to ensure is happening?
Well, it's the law.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just asking though, do you all ensure that that's happening?
Yes.
And then the allocations that they are provided are sufficient to ensure that they are being paid a living wage, right? So whatever we give, whatever you all contract for is enough for them to make payments of a living wage to their workers.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and when we, as the council likes to do, create new clean teams programs, are the allocations that are being included in the budget enough to ensure that the workers are making at least a living wage?
Well, I think it ends up being, sometimes it's a chicken and egg, right? Because
I don't know that the amount has increased over the years. It seems like the clean teams get the same amount, and yet the CPI goes up, wage goes up, and then I know the minimum wage is going to increase again in July of this year, right? So I imagine the living wage might be adjusted slightly as well. So
then what you're going to end up happening is a problem of how many people you're going to be able to hire, right?
well, that's what I'm getting at, right? So
Yeah.
if the amount that we're getting clean teams is fixed, but yet the cost of employing clean teams workers increases, then it necessarily means you're gonna have fewer workers. What does that mean for the ability to fulfill the mission, given the boundaries?
It would strain it, particularly if the boundaries expand.
Okay, so can you and your team get back to the committee about whether, in your observation, the amounts that the clean teams are actually getting and the number of workers that are working in the various corridors, that there's a synergy there that makes sense?
Yes.
Somebody with a clean teams contract is going to say, oh, we don't have enough money, so we don't want this contract. I think they're going to try to make it work. And I appreciate the work that these folks are doing, and I've seen it firsthand, both in the way that the streets and corridors are being cleaned, but also they're employing, in many cases, who have barriers to entry to employment. And so I think the program is a really good program, but as a council member, I want to make sure that we're mindful of what we could be doing to exacerbate the challenges with maintaining the clean streets as they've done with the same resources that they get consistently despite the increase in costs.
Absolutely.
The commercial revitalization, the proposed budget appears to show a reduction of $906,281. What's the basis for that reduction? And what, if any, impact will there be to the program?
And I'll ask Curtis to explain some of the details. We had moved some of our program costs within our budget. So I think you and I had discussed this in previous hearings. Our innovation and equitable development department had been sort of woven into other departments. And I wanted to break that out so that So Aspire and the Dream Grants and the Made in DC program is running in our InnoEd department had never been broken out into its own department. And so I wanted that to be able to be sort of seen in its own. We've got a great manager in Kate Marins, and I wanted to be able to see that programmatically distinctly in the budget. And so you'll see a few adjustments where we are taking those expenses from the places they had been in other places. Some of it had been commercial revitalization, some of it had been in business opportunities, and now it's showing where it should be in its rightful place in the in its own place. And Curtis can maybe.
So, Chairman, would you just mind repeating the question? I just want to draw down to exactly what you're.
Sure. Mr. Lewis, I'm looking at the commercial revitalization area of the budget that appears to reflect a $906,281 reduction. Right. So 200 of that is the Main Streets piece that we just spoke about. And that's the one, the startup cost for the 4 Main Streets. 254,000 of that is also that clean teams reduction that we were talking about, where we're dealing with boundary costs and related one-times for the clean teams. And then there's a $451,000 decrease in capacity building. That's the reallocation of 1 FTE. And then that's also cannabis, the cannabis business grant of $300,000 being moved to InnoEd, or Innovation and Equitable, to the new Innovation and Equitable Development Program. Okay, how much is in the new Innovation Equitable Development Program? So there's 2,186,000. Of which, what portion again is coming from that prior? So from capacity building in activity 4020 is 300,000 for cannabis, or for cannabis. Okay, so let me. I had a lot of questions a little later on, but I'm gonna skip and ask. The FY23 proposed one-time funding costs associated with FY22. One of these one-time costs is a $300,000 budget item to support financial and technical assistance to medical cannabis business enterprises. Right. As Oversight, the department told the committee that it only distributed a small amount, approximately $12,000 of this money at that point. What's the status of the actual program, and how much money has the department distributed from this fund to date?
So we are in the process of releasing that grant program probably in the next several weeks. Our plan was to do this in sort of 2 phases. We first held the series of salons that I mentioned in my testimony, and now we are at the stage where we are putting out a notice of funding availability to do the second phase where we're doing this.
So it doesn't sound like you all have identified at this point an applicant who you all would be able to help with the fund.
No, we didn't. We actually first wanted to make sure that we were really engaging the cannabis community around where the market was. And there was also initially this big question because some legislation was maybe first coming out around where the law was going to fall on the recreational uses, which was unclear at the beginning of the fiscal. And so that was also kind of something we wanted to make sure that we saw which way that panned out.
Yeah, but that was on the recreation side. This
right.
is the medical side, and the medical cannabis fund application cycle for licenses opened in November, and it's going to close in about 4 days, less than 4 days. We're already into today. So how do you all envision the fund actually helping with the people who have applied for this round? Or will it not be useful for those people?
I think it's going to be more useful for people who are trying to get into the industry. Those people that, this was really looking at the people who were justice involved in veterans, and the people that are already engaged with the, in the licensure, are not necessarily in the kind of EIE band of eligibility, right? So I think we were really seeing a mismatch in regard to where the, where the fit and the need is. In some regards, this was very similar to sports wagering, where we're saying this is a very high barrier industry where people who have previously not been able to break in are going to need to find a lot of innovative ways to build into this market.
No, I appreciate that. I think it sounds accurate and it makes sense, except I think that the applicants who are in this round that's going to close on March 28th will likely include people who fit that description that you just described.
Well, we had 5 inquiries, and there were none of them were approved sort of CBE EIEs. And we see a real gap in the private capital and banking. And the gap is there's still a big gap in terms of making that need between.
So can I put this back on you then? Because if the 5 inquiries that you fielded, of those 5, none of them were equity impact enterprise CVs, then perhaps identifying the equity impact CVE or the cannabis, the medical cannabis business enterprises from the applicants would give you a pool of people to outreach to proactively. Is that not something that, at least to make sure that they had access to the information and were aware that they might be able to avail themselves of this government program?
Well, the other submissions are currently in review, right? Possibly, yes, possibly.
Okay, well, let's give that some thought. I mean, I know we only have 4 days left in this round, but I don't know how, and maybe you and your team can explain to me in talking with the procurement folks, like, because the application, the round closes on March 28th, does that necessarily preclude an applicant from availing themselves of this fund? Or maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'd love to know, because it's a shame if this fund is sitting there and the folks who is intended to benefit in the application cycle might not benefit from it. So just if you can give that some thought and circle back with the committee, I would appreciate it. Thanks. Let me go back up to my, and staff, please let me know if I'm joined by one of my colleagues so I can establish the clock. Let me see where I left off. Okay. So in your proposed FY23 budget, the number of FTE would increase by 3.3, but it appears that the operating budget reflects a decrease by 3%. Is that accurate? So can you reconcile the increase in FTEs and the decrease in, I guess, the amount?
So we have 58 DSLBD employees, and then an MOU with the OCFO for that sort of additional 1.3. And I'll ask Curtis to explain the 3% shift.
Right. So in terms of, there are 3.3 FTE that are increasing, right? 2 of those FTE are just the change in how, 2 of those FTE are additional compliance FTE that are added to the budget. 1.3 of that is the MOU interagency with OCFO. Previously, we had budgeted these things in NPS, but the change in how we're doing MOUs and interagency now, we actually add those FTE to the PS budget. So that accounts for the 3 FTE. So in your other question was, yeah, we're showing a decrease in the operating budget.
Yeah. And let me pull it there. Yeah.
So, I don't think that's necessarily related to the FT. When you're looking at the 3% decrease, where are you seeing that? You're seeing that from the PS or that overall?
The decrease appears in the continuing full-time employment pay, though.
Oh, I see. I see. So this is kind of a net. I think it's better to look at it from an overall PS change. So there's actually an increase in PS of 239, which accounts for the change in the FTE.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. How many vacancies do you have currently?
We currently have 1 vacancy.
Okay, and how much in vacancy savings for FY22?
Curtis, can you go back for us?
For FY22, we have approximately 457,000 in vacancy savings.
457,000. And did you have a surplus in any of the 2 previous fiscal years at the conclusion of those fiscal years? 20.
So in FY21, we had a surplus of approximately 197,000.
Okay. And what about 20?
In 20, if you could just bear with me 1 second.
Sure.
FY20, we had a surplus of 114,000.
Okay. And you said you have how many? You said you have 1 vacancy, but the Schedule A we had, and I know we got it a little while ago, but it reflects, my understanding is it reflects 5 vacancies.
I think that's just behind. We have, I think that's behind. We've got offer letters out for the final vacancy.
You've hired for 4 positions between the time that we received the Schedule A and today's hearing?
Yes.
And then you have, for the final vacancy, there's an offer that's already been extended?
Yes.
What's the final vacancy? What position is that?
It's for compliance for a staff assistant.
Staff assistant? Okay. And you mentioned in your statement that the mayor's proposed budget supports 2 necessary additional FTEs in the compliance division?
Yes.
There looks like there's a 40.7% decrease in contractual services other in the proposed FY23 budget. What is that attributable to?
Okay, so again, that's attributed to the movement of cannabis from contracts to grants of 300,000. And then that's also the movement of the OCFO interagency MOU leaving the contracts line in NPS and being budgeted in PS. So that 1.3 FTE amount plus the cannabis movement from contracts to grants.
Okay. but the amounts have not decreased. They've just been moved to other.
Correct.
Councilmember,
Yes.
I have to amend my earlier statement, not the, my offer letter had gone out for that staff assistant. The vacant position is the executive service position that was vacant by Ronnie Edwards.
Okay, got it. So
Sorry about that.
that's the head of the division, right? Is that
Right.
the,
Yes.
and are you currently, is that a position that's currently open for, is that being advertised?
That's not, that one's not currently advertised. We've, we've sort of repurposed that. The chief of staff has been sort of doing those responsibilities and that manager. So we're kind of rethinking how to fill those duties.
Okay. Sorry. What about the area that reflects for the proposed FY23 budget, a decrease in the customer service operating funding by more than 61%?
Okay, so again, that Mr. Chairman, is it's a reallocation of an FTE. So the chief administrative officer is moving that position from customer service to performance management.
Got it. Okay. Can you talk about, Director, the proposed decreases to the business development funding within the Access to Capital program from $2.7 million in FY22 to $938,000 in FY23?
So I can also speak to that. So that's the movement of 5 FTE, about $468,000 going from business development to the new NOED program.
Okay.
That's also $500,000 decrease in the one-time funding for ARPA for Clean City. Then there are also $725,000 in decreases or movements to the new NOED program, which is $175 for District Bridges, $250 for Ward 8, and then $300,000 for Friendship Heights, and $75,000 for Aspire.
Okay, and what would be really helpful for the committee if in a follow-up, you all can provide a line item sort of breakdown of the innovation fund that you just referred to, where things are being reallocated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Certainly.
Thank you. Can you also, for the benefit of the community, provide, because I don't think I saw this in any material in performance anywhere else, but a breakdown of the clean teams and main streets and the actual projected or the actual funding for each in FY 2022 and 2023 proposed?
Sure, we can get that to you.
Okay. Do you all have that? Is that something that you all can get to us fairly quickly, Director?
Yes, we do. We do.
All right, so I look forward to receiving that. So the overall budget, as you mentioned, is going to decrease by 1.3%. How do you see that impacting the agency's ability to fulfill its mission, if at all? Or do you have all the resources you need to fulfill the mission of the department?
So the biggest decrease is the decrease in the food waste program we are doing, and so I think that's an interesting. It's an interesting exercise. I think I've enjoyed learning about how to sort of compost, and it's important for us to be responsible citizens. But and my team has reminded me it was highlighted nationally at South by West. I think it's so I don't want to minimize it, but it is not a narrative to the work that we're doing. I think anytime you can save money by not wasting money, businesses helps their efficiency. But I think that the important improvements and the augmenting of the budget, the backfilling to the new amount for Aspire, having robust retail in the budget, that are in this year's budget that sort of offset that one, reduction, put us in a tremendous stead for being able to do the important work that we've got to do this year. I'm really excited. You're going to hear this on. I have the best team in government, and I'm excited about what we have ahead of us.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn to another 10-minute round to Councilmember Lewis George.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Not sure what I missed, so if I repeat a question, just let me know and say you covered it with Councilman McDuffie. I wanted to ask about, last year, I was proud to work with Chairman McDuffie, and we're securing funding for the Old Tacoma Business Association in the fiscal year 2022 budget. We have heard great things about this investment and how it's allowed the Tacoma business to expand its work on the DC side of the neighborhood. They did ask for an increase in their fiscal year 23 allocation to match what they're receiving from the city of Tacoma Park, which is, I think, $46,750 per year. They've asked us, though, because DSLBD requires that grants get split 50-50 between administration and programmatic funding. And so this requirement is particularly causing them some problems. Can you say more about whether, why the 50-50 split between administration and programmatic funding, and about and whether there can be some flexibility provided given their unique border sharing status?
Well, I will say that, we know that we have, reached an agreement with them. And so I think we're happy to have this sort of unique cross-border arrangement. I think it's important that that arrangement doesn't vary from the arrangements that we have with our local main streets. I know there was some pushback on this. I remain resolute about having these local dollars continue to go into the pockets of our businesses. So I know there were feelings about it. I acknowledge those feelings, and I'm happy they agreed to the 50-50 split.
Okay. And so the 50-50 split is between administration and programmatic funding. I guess programmatic funding would be support towards the businesses.
Well, right. And so, yes. And so, my goal is always to make sure that we are supporting these important organizations, that they are also able to support themselves. Particularly a business that is, a neighbor, right? This is a unique relationship. But I think that, as we were discussing earlier, particularly as we are finding ways to find synergy. I am the director who increased the administrative percentage of these grants from 30% to 50%. So 50% of this grant is allowed to be used for administrative costs. I'm not interested in going beyond 50% on administrative costs. And I get it. I ran a nonprofit in a past life. It's hard to raise money for administrative costs. I think as we have these conversations about the directions of the way that we are serving our commercial corridors, and as we get innovative about the way that those funds can be used, how are we using the entire ecosystem to make sure we're getting resources, around these. Let's be innovative about it, but let's not turn these local funds into the operating funds for neighboring main streets.
Okay, I want to, I guess the issue there is, I know Director Barclay does a lot of work since it's a small organization. So I think the distinction between administration and their programmatic work is sort of not really a firm line there. And I think that's where I guess where the issue comes in particularly, but I hear your reasoning on keeping it sort of across the board,
but,
keeping it the same.
Right, but as do many of our smaller main streets, right? And so it would be unfair to our other smaller DC-based main streets to come in differently. We have plenty of other main streets who also have directors who do a lot of hands-on work. And so I think we just need to continue to find innovative ways to, and I think the ways that we can make sure that we are, just fostering good relationships with our neighbors, but getting the right kinds of relationships, and then, plugging them into the Main Street family so that those businesses can get other types of benefits from being part of the neighborhood, while not eroding the system we currently have, and staying open. But I understand, but those feelings are felt across the entire system. I've already increased from 30 to 50%. And unless we want this to be an entirely different scenario, why would we do for Maryland more than we do for DC?
Okay. I want to, I hear you on that. And I think a lot of us are on borders. I know some of our wards are on borders, and there's just particularly different
it's tough.
Issues that comes out with some of our border.
Right. We want to be good neighbors for sure.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I think you said earlier the number of main streets we sort of have and have had over the tenure over.
28.
How many did you say again?
28.
28. Okay. Within this time period when we've had, I guess, 28 main streets happen, have we ever ended a main street contract in this time period? And if so, what was the reason these contracts or grants, I guess, were taken away from the main streets?
Oh, to my knowledge, I think we have ever I don't think a main street has ever stopped. I think that the operations of the main streets have changed hands, but I don't think that the location of the main street has stopped. I don't think we've ever said this will not have. I'll check with the team on this.
Okay.
There may be one instance, I'll confirm with the team where there was one that is no, but I will, I'll confirm.
Okay. What I'm understanding is there may be a time where I guess the Main Street wasn't ended, but maybe I guess how do you refer to them? The grantee,
the grantee, yeah.
Yeah, the grantee was changed.
Correct.
Okay. Do we know like what happened in those instances?
Let me get back to you, Todd. Don't let me,
Okay.
It's not.
Okay. I want to see if there's any new funding in the budget to sort of deal with some of the oversight and management pieces from DSLBD to some of the main streets. I think I guess there have been some allegations of mismanagement, and I want to know sort of how your office is responding and working to, I guess, rebuild confidence in the oversight of public funds particularly. And so I wanted to know if there were any funds going to DSLBD's efforts to conduct rigorous oversight of its grantees, particularly within the Main Streets program.
So, we hold the law in all cases, and I think in the case that you're referring to, we are currently cooperating fully with the Inspector General. There are processes in place and we operate with full transparency. The good news is there are always processes. So if there are even the slightest concern has a route to be deeply investigated, and it will be. And so we look forward to the Inspector General, and I think I'm confident that the work of this will out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just was trying to see if for us to avoid this happening again, in like not just in the particular instance of our instance, but just in future instances and in future main streets, whether it's Ward 4 or any other main street, whether there was a need for any additional funding or positions to sort of help with like continued oversight over funds and management so that we don't end up in this place. Like, is there any enhancement oversight and grant management essentially is what I'm asking.
I think the broader conversation around main streets, around which areas are ready for a main street, is probably a good place, a better place to start. Because I think that when the neighborhoods are really cohesive around the type of work that they want to do, and when the neighborhoods are ready to really dig in, is when the main streets really can take off and optimize the tools and the resources that are available.
Okay, so I guess you don't believe that we need any enhancements, right? I guess my question is whether DSLBD needs any enhancements for oversight and grant management to sort of help mitigate any future instances of this. So I'm guessing your answer is no, you don't think that.
My answer is categorically no.
Okay, all right. I think that my time is up. So sorry, Chairman. Thank you.
Let me know if you're thinking in another round. I have a few more questions before I conclude my questions for the director. But if you let me know, I'm happy to provide you some additional time if you have additional questions, Councilmember.
I just have one, which is about the public safety.
Let me let you go ahead and ask that.
It's just one. I talked about this in the past, and I think I brought it up about DSLBD's role. I believe every agency has a role in public safety. There's no agency you can give me an agency and I can tell each agency where role they have in public safety. And so DSLBD's role, in my opinion, is to sort of support some of our smaller local businesses in supporting with our camera rebate program. And I think I brought this up before. And just wanted to see whether that's something that you all think that can happen and how that would be structured. A number of our small businesses, and I'm talking about the small businesses that are on our corridors that have already been identified by Deputy Mayor Geldard, as well as Linda Harley Harper, for areas where we know there is increased gun violence and crime. those small businesses the opportunity for anybody in those high areas to have small businesses supported with the security camera rebate program. As you know, the limitations of that program really is that they can get reimbursed for the cameras, but the issue is that many of those cameras require data storage, and that seems to be the expensive piece that these small businesses are unable to maintain, which is the storage piece, which means when MPD goes in to collect any footage, sometimes it's not there because they didn't have the ability to have that, to pay for that storage is what I'm getting at. So I was wanting to see if there was a possibility for DSLBD to help the small businesses that are in high crime corridors with grants to assist with the security rebate program, if that makes sense.
Well, we do not have any money set aside for that, but the good news is I am a member of the Oversight Committee on the Building Blocks program. You know, I will in an affirmative way gently disagree with you, council member.
Right.
DSD is way more deeply involved in public safety than just the cameras, right?
You're right. This is yes.
I think that, you know, I think that when we have active corridors, that in itself is a deterrence for crime. When we have lights on in businesses, when we have people coming and going, that in itself is, you know, that is also a deterrent to crime. When we have our clean teams walking up and down on the corridor, that those bodies help. You know, we actually had a clean team member turn in a gun that they found last year, which was a little bit scary, but it's very helpful as more guns off of the streets. Keeping the corridor safe actually shows the care that deters crime, which we all know. When we have businesses that are hiring members of the community, that is a deterrent to crime. The clean teams themselves are, you know, a re-entry program for many returning citizens.
Absolutely.
As deterrent to crime. So, you know, we are deeply involved in sort of a lot of the building blocks initiatives for safety. You know, we can, you know, be helpful in any way that, you know, Main Street, I think the Main Streets, you know, programs themselves, as they become aware of these types of programs, could be helpful in the TA that they provide in assisting business owners access those resources. You know, I think Building Blocks is probably an excellent resource for, you know, for maybe getting access to different types of funding. And I think Main Streets as boots on the ground and DSLBD then tangentially would be a great resource for that. I think that, you know, public safety is everybody's issue and DSLBD is deeply involved in it. We're happy to, you know, to amplify any kind of efforts that help us get, you know, get the crime sort of de-escalated. It impacts all of us. So in only the most respectful way would I disagree with you.
You know what? This is the first time I say, you know what, I absolutely agree. And I think you're absolutely right into the ways you've discussed, you know, DSLBD's role. This came up for me when we were talking about what, you know, everybody's like, well, we're going to do about public safety and some immediate responses. I know there are a few people who have corridors. Kennedy Street happens to be one of my major corridors that have seen increased gun violence, and then near Petworth Station. And a lot of times when we have those gun violences, sometimes people will drive off and we're trying to like ID, you know, we're trying to ID a vehicle. We're trying to, you know, do some investigation, and we'll be like, oh, well, let's check the cameras of some of our businesses and see if they caught anything. And we've had instances where the business is like, oh, we don't have storage. We weren't able to catch anything. So this is sort of in, you know, on the ground ways in which I was like, well, why don't you have it? And they're like, oh, storage costs this much. And I was like, all right, well, this is a conversation that I think we can bring and see if we can get some additional resources so that we can sort of be a part of the, I guess, long-term solutions, short-term solutions, and everything in between. But I absolutely categorically agree with you in all the ways that DSLBD contributes in more than just that way. But something that I want to explore if we can help our small businesses so we can, you know, deal with this problem we're having in our city. So thank you. And Councilmember Duffy, I will follow up with you about this if this is something you think is a great idea. I know you've led in public safety. And so we can.
No, I
discuss.
appreciate it. Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George, and certainly I'm here to follow up with you on that very important issue. And I have just a couple more questions, Director Whitfield, around capital budget and DES system. I know you all first got funded in FY19, and that you all continue to develop the system. I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but it's not completed yet, correct?
Correct.
And you expect to still complete it by FY 2023?
Yes.
Okay, and how much exactly the capital fund of your agency's budget for the DES system?
We have $500,000 in the capital budget for this.
And that's for FY 23?
Yes.
Is there something, how much is in the budget this year for DES?
Where's our final on that? $720,000 in the budget.
Okay, and have you expended any portion of that $700,000+ for FY 22?
So we have an MOU with Octo for that money, so we moved that over to Octo.
Okay, and somewhere in the capital budget, it suggests that you're allocating $28.8 million over 6 years to DSLBD for the DES expenditures. Is that accurate?
I asked Curtis about that. That does not ring a bell to me. That Curtis?
You said 28 point something million? Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, let me see if I can get a page for you. I know it's page 81, but let me get you the specific area where we see that.
You know, and I do have to say that no, we've not heard any of any such allocation.
What I would like to do,
I'm sure that the director would love it, but
oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Were you all able to hear me?
no.
Okay, all right. What I would like to do is identify where this is in the budget, because I've not seen it before. And I don't recall the DES system requiring that sort of expenditure in order to be completed.
No, Councilman, we are not either familiar with that level of investment.
Okay, all right. Well,
Happy to follow up and dig into that with you.
that sounds good. I don't have any additional questions right now. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we adjourn?
Councilmember, I just like to add to the record. I want to give a deep appreciation to you. I want to thank you for your partnership and your chairmanship of this committee, and to Mayor Bowser for her leadership on the budget, and the businesses of the District of Columbia for their continued resilience. Last, certainly not least, to my team. Yeah, you know, the wonderful team at DSLBD who continues to give it all to the businesses every day. Thank you very much for the honor to testify, and I look forward to continuing to work and serve.
And
Chairman McDuffie, I'm so sorry to do this, to get in the way of the adjournment, but I just wanted to make sure you saw that I was here.
I did not see it, so I'm glad you did get in the way, Councilman Pinto. Let me note for the record that we've been joined by Ward 2 Councilmember Brooke Pinto. Councilmember Pinto, it looks like you are muted now, and I don't see your video, so I'm happy to talk to you for a round if you'd like to have one.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would appreciate that. I could do hopefully a quick round if that's all right with everyone.
So, you bet.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Director Whitfield. I just want to kind of.
Councilman Pinto, let me just make sure you don't intend to turn your video on. I just want to make sure you know that we cannot see you.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's okay. I'm in transit.
Okay, all right.
So I'll keep it off if that's all right.
Sure. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
No, thank you for checking. So Director Whitfield, I just wanted to continue our conversation mostly from our performance oversight hearing from a few weeks ago. But now as we think about this budget and everything that we can be doing to support our small businesses, curious if you can talk to me about the funding levels for our Main Street programs and how you think about applying a consistent approach of funding to all of our main streets, or a tiered approach wherein larger main streets versus smaller main streets receive different levels of funding. As you may know, I am hoping to help you all establish a Foggy Bottom Main Street this year. And so I'm curious about the funding process as we engage in that activity.
Sure, council member. I think this is a topic that is on everyone's mind. I think that we are realizing that there are a series of considerations as we're thinking about starting main streets. I think that there's probably very few neighborhoods that think they don't need a main street. And I think that we are wanting to be really thoughtful. I think Martin Smith gave some very thoughtful testimony at Performance Oversight about some of the contemplations about the ways to approach those conversations. The kinds of services that are available across the city. People sometimes forget that areas can get services if they're a main street or not. We've had some conversations since Performance Oversight about, ways to make sure that the training and technical assistance that is available from various resources, the SBDC, DSLBD, various and sundry partners around the city. How do we make sure that we're amplifying those resources so that we know that every corridor can make sure they're taking advantage of it? And then also, really importantly, and Council Member Lewis George was sort of just asking and alluding to this question, like, how do we know that a neighborhood is ready for it? I think council has ideas about what they want a neighborhood to look like when they get a main street. But, DSLBD receives money in its budget. We produce a competition for funds. A group will win that competition. And then sometimes council and others find themselves maybe not as excited with the outcome of a fair competition. And then they come back to DSLBD and say, well, I don't like the way this is. I wanted somebody else to win. This isn't great.
Yeah.
And
Director, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm mindful of time because we have a few more questions. I'm more, I know what you're referring to, but I was more just talking about kind of writ large the funding levels.
Yeah.
But I do want to move on just because there are a couple other important things I want to get to. So for clean teams, at what levels are the following clean teams funded in the mayor's proposal for Shaw and DuPont Circle?
Let me get the Shaw Clean Team. Find it here, is a 120. Shaw Main Street, $122,000. And the DuPont Circle Clean Team is at $132,000.
Okay, and is that Shaw Clean Team an expansion from last year?
Nope, that is level funding.
Gotcha. Okay. So one of the items that we had asked the mayor for funding, and it looks like appears in the proposed budget is for specific support for pop-ups and leases for ground floor retail space. Will DSLBD have any authority over that funding, or will that be managed through another agency?
I think that we'll be working, we'll probably be the agency that is taking the lead on that, I think.
All right, very exciting.
Yeah.
I know that there are a lot of concerns in various neighborhoods throughout Ward 2 and throughout the city about some of the vacancies we continue to see. And so hopeful that funding will be able to make a difference there.
Yes. Yes.
In terms of the waste compactor grants, I am so thrilled, and people have been really excited about the commercial waste compactor grants that were put in place for last year. Is this funded for businesses for FY 2023?
I not.
It is not.
It is not. That was ARPA funding.
Okay. Interesting. So I guess with the understanding that I assume you're supportive of the budget as is, but if this were to reoccur next year, when we were during performance oversight, you had said that DSLBD was in the middle of the grant making process. Were there any lessons learned from that cycle that you would apply to next year if we were able to restore that funding?
Well, so, we're kind of in the early phases of this. I think we did some exciting work this year with that grant, particularly around keeping food out of the waste system, which was a new element of this. So I think we'll have to take a breath on it and see about this. But I'm excited about where that composting element and really taking a broader look at the food cycle, as opposed to just only focusing on the back end and trash, right? Both from an environmental component and from a cost saving and waste component. I think there will be lessons. I don't know what those lessons are right now, but I think it's a much more holistic approach, and I think it's I hope that we have some good lessons, but I don't want to overlay my guess of those lessons, but I think we should have some lessons.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me see in our last minute and a half here. So, as you know, I'm very worried about additional supports that are needed for our Chinatown businesses. Is there what supports in the current FY 2023 budget proposal can our Chinese-owned businesses pursue or take advantage of in Chinatown?
Well, our Chinese-owned businesses have access to every resource of the District of Columbia, right? And so everything that we offer at DSLBD is open to our Chinese-owned businesses. I think if there are some language issues, the Mayor's Office of Asian and Pacific Islander office also stands at the ready to assist. But I think that there's a panoply of resources that are available to our businesses across the whole city, and then they are also specifically within the downtown bid, which I think is constantly trying to amplify that area and bring people into that central business district. So I think they benefit from being there also.
Okay. And then just lastly, we've talked before about evaluating the impact of some of the grants that you are leading. How many FTEs are in your department devoted to evaluating the impact of the grant programs and other programs that you all have?
So we've got 58. We've got 58. Well, I guess 59.3. Wait, they're looking at 56. Oh, I always get that number. We got two coming in the coming year. So 56 currently and 58 in the next FTE. within the different programs, depending on the grant, we are building in some, some ways to try and, collect some data. We have we do have a data analyst. We try to be thoughtful about the way we are contemplating those grants. Some of that data analysis, over time can be, can be a little harder to collect, because I think some of the qualitative data is a little more interesting. But I think the DES is going to be really helpful in helping us really nail down some of the impactful trends that we anticipate seeing with the grants that we have, and we'll be completing that in the next fiscal.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
And thank you, Councilmember Pinto. We are
Wait, I can't.
we're having yeah, we have some challenges with your audio. So we did not hear the last statement you made, unfortunately, but we appreciate that you were able to join us and get around the questions. And if you have any other follow-up questions, we're happy to send those from the committee to the agency to get answers. So I was going to close out, but I want to reference the page where the committee's team saw the 28.8 million.
Oh, right.
And that was page 81-EN0, where it talks about the small business IT project in the capital budget.
Councilmember, if I could ask, is that, are you seeing that in DSLBD's budget, or are you seeing that in Octo's budget?
It may be in Octo's budget. Does that not have anything to do with you all?
I mean, I would actually have to reference the page, but I want to make the assumption that that's not DSLBD. It just may have a capital project number.
Okay. All right, we're happy to follow up with it, but I wanted to let you know where.
We can confirm for certain.
Okay. All right, I don't have any additional questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we close out, Director?
No, sir. Thank you very much.
And thank you. And thank you to my colleagues who were able to join today. Thank you, Director Whitfield and your team, as well as to earlier to Commissioner Woods and her team for testifying. This marks the end of the committee's second budget oversight hearing. Next budget oversight hearing is scheduled for Monday, March 28th, 2022 at 9 a.m. We will hear from the Public Service Commission and the Office of People's Counsel. The time is now 12:14 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
Thank you.
Thank you.